But
Uh,
we do have big population Aboriginals in both Saskatchewan and Manitoba.
it's true, and I can't state um, how much of the population is in fact Aboriginal of those respective provinces.
No, not
Um,
for this.
yeah, so this person explained um, that the judge asked if anyone in the room wanted to be excused or disqualified from sitting on a jury in this case. Individuals with conflict, a relationship with either family, or a scheduling conflict could request to be recused from being selected for the trial. According to this prospective juror, who did not go to serve on the jury, a significant number of the Aboriginal people in the room asked to be disqualified, either because they had a relationship with Colten Boushie's family or because of other circumstances that made them unavailable. The
Uh-huh.
person estimates that more than half of the Aboriginal people were granted permission by the judge to be exempt from the trial and free to go home. So, the prospective juror goes on to describe some of the remaining 45 or so were vocal in expressing their bias and signaling to everyone in the room that they were unfit to serve on the jury. Quote, you could audibly hear them talking amongst themselves, discussing how they were going to hang Stanley, or they were going to make sure he gets hung, or that if they don't get the results they want, that they are going to handle it themselves. The person said the Aboriginal people who remained the person said of the Aboriginal people who remained. This account comes from one individual who spoke to the Sun and has not even corroborated by other witnesses. So they even state in the article, like, hey, this person said this. There's nothing to prove that it was true, but this is like, if this is true, this is like pretty important.
Yeah.
Quote, the thing that was the most shocking to me was the fact that they were so audible from where I was sitting across the room, and there were police scattered throughout the room, and no one stopped them. So, yeah.
So I read
Um,
that same article. I'm
right.
not going to say it's true. I'm not going to say it's false because the source is unknown. They want to be anonymous.
Well, the
It's
the Sun is keeping them anonymous from what they said. Like
oh
they
for
said that
sure.
the Sun is choosing not to identify the person,
Yeah.
which I mean is kind of smart, right?
Oh for
Sometimes,
sure.
even if this person is 100% telling the truth, them making this statement and then their name being published is like
A target.
that's yeah, you're a pretty big target. That's a pretty big foot and mouth kind of situation.
But I mean, it's not uncommon for someone to have a biased opinion to whatever you're going in, right? Like, I know
Hmm.
for myself, I'm going to be biased on certain things. It's just how I feel, right? Certain things are going to make me, if you're going to a sexual assault thing, right, a trial, you're
Well,
you're gonna
yeah,
be like, this guy's kind of a scumbag, right? Or like, I could see it because if it's like with children, it's even worse, right? Because you just
it's
believe that this
really hard
guy's
to separate emotion from that.
yeah, you're gonna believe this guy's a fucking animal.
Yeah. One of the things that should be noted as far as this jury selection thing is that um, each lawyer is afforded. Um,
4 challenges, right?
I thought it was three.
I think it's 4.
Is it four? Either way, four, not that much more than three. Ultimately, is a really small number, right? So
Well,
if you go
you
into
gotta describe to people who don't know what that means.
okay, so a preemptive challenge is um, a lawyer is afforded the opportunity to dismiss a potential juror with zero justification. All it is literally is a person comes up. So I've read into a little bit about how the jury selection process goes and things like that. Um, and so basically, they call each juror up to to the I think they do it into the jury stand or something like that. In this case, they wouldn't have a jury stand because it was a large gym that was turned into a courtroom of sorts. So they would call a prospective juror up, and each of the lawyers literally, like, they have your name, your date
Mm-hmm.
of birth, and your occupation. I
Okay.
believe that is all that they have for information on you. They don't know, whether you, in fact, do have some sort of relation with in this case, the deceased or their family, or maybe the accused and their family. Um, However, that's fairly easy to figure out, I think, ahead of time.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that's why I never got selected for my jury. Maybe it turned out that it was someone I used to work with or something. I don't know. But they bring the person up into the jury box, and if one of the lawyers says challenge, that's all it is, just the word challenge. All right, you're dismissed. Time to go home. That's all it is.
Okay.
They don't have to justify anything. However, there is a limited number of times that they can do this. And for example, in this situation, beyond the judge basically saying like, who wants to go home kind of thing, there were roughly 45 or so Aboriginals remaining. No amount of preemptive challenges would be able to eliminate all of those people.
So they couldn't do like up to like, let's say 6 or 8 challenges to get so-called Aboriginals off the jury selection.
Well, now the thing is that the Crown would want Aboriginals on there because they're more likely to be sympathetic to their side of the story. And the defense, in this case, if we're going to play that race card and we're going to go that route, the defense would probably want to eliminate Aboriginal people from the jury, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is like no Crown, in this case where the victim was Aboriginal, the Crown is not going to want to go, I'm going to get rid of all the Aboriginal people, because that hurts their case of sorts, right? They want a sympathetic jury. Because that's the whole job of theirs. Each lawyer is ultimately trying to sway the sympathies of the jury. And so, I mean, yes, worst case scenario, if we're talking about like trying to do racial discrimination crap, worst case scenario, 8 are gone. That's 8 of 45.
Okay.
Why did all those other people not get selected? Well, there's a real good possibility that some of them were they're not acceptable to be jurors, whether it's because of an obvious prejudice or an obvious bias held beforehand, which according to this person who was allegedly at jury selection, that many of them were very vocal about it. So a lawyer doesn't even have to use a preemptive challenge to eliminate those people. A lawyer can just say, this person carries an obvious bias. Now, if a lawyer wants to get rid of a prospective juror without using a preemptive challenge, they can challenge it, and if the a lawyer from the opposing side doesn't object, then they're gone. Like if both lawyers agree, hey, this person shouldn't be here, then that person's gone. But if one of the lawyers doesn't want him gone, and one of the lawyers does want him gone, but doesn't want to use his preemptive challenge, what happens is they take 2 other prospective jurors, selected at random. Like everybody's given a number, and these numbers are just literally drawn out of a bowl. They take 2 other jurors, selected at random. The jurors are sworn in, and then evidence or an argument is made of why this person should be dismissed. Then those 2 prospective jurors that have been sworn then decide whether this person should be allowed to stay or not.
All right, so it's an all-white jury.
Yep.
And I guess the family said it was stacked against them to lose.
That's what they're claiming, but I mean, yeah.
All right, so family says Colten Boushie's family says it's stacked up against them because of an all-Caucasian jury.
Right.
And the judge, of course, being white himself. So they go to court, which was, what, a few weeks ago?
It was a 3-week trial. It was ended... Oh, geez, when was it? Where is it? I can't find it there. Basically, it was 3 weeks, and it ended, like, the week of the 5th. I don't recall exactly what day in there. Anywhere between the 5th and the 9th is when it actually ended.
So when was he acquitted?
The exact date?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I gotta find that. Friday the 9th of February.
So February 9th, Gerald Stanley was acquitted, right?
Yes. He was acquitted of second-degree murder and the subsequent possible charge of manslaughter.
And that's when chaos broke loose, right? That's when everybody was like, injustice for Colten Boushie, right? And then basically Canada as a whole divided into two, right? Either you were for or you were against it.
That's what the media likes you to believe, that, oh, this is dividing the country. No, it hasn't divided the country. On this particular topic, maybe.
Well, I remember that I wasn't following this very closely. I knew it was like more of a case of almost self-defense, but they didn't say it was self-defense, right? But as soon as he got acquitted, the internet broke here. Because I remember social media erupted into people hating on each other. Friends were hating on friends, saying like, this guy murdered a child. Because I remember a lot, like the first week, they were claiming Colten Boushie was like a kid.
They were referring to him as a kid, even though he's a 22-year-old man.
He's a 22-year-old man.
Like some people argue, oh, you're still a kid at that age. That's a totally different thing to argue. But if we're going to look at, what the law says, 18 years old, you're an adult. That makes you a man.
Even if he was 18 years old, I would still say, like, errors could be made. But at the age of 22, you're setting yourself up to, like, what kind of lifestyle you're going to live.
Yeah, but I mean, are we also going to get into that whole debate of, like, if you had a shitty upbringing or you've been dealt a bad hand growing up, like, how long do you get to ride that excuse, right?
Well, of course, that was used, right? The family wanted... They wanted a change, right? That was the thing. A white man got off for murdering an indigenous person. That was the main focus.
Yeah.
Of this after, right? It wasn't like, like... It took me a few weeks to actually find an article on CBC that actually said that, yeah, he was 22 years old, he had a rifle. It made me believe these guys were on a joyride and they knew Gerald Stanley as a mechanic and they needed a tire fix, but somehow he ended up executing Colten Boushie.
Yeah.
And that was for a long time. That was a very long time on CBC, a free press, all that were just claiming this is what it is, and then systematic racism, they were throwing that out, and then how like it's all white jury, and that's when it said like we need to change, right? The family's like we need to change, and they wanted a representation of indigenous people in a jury. They didn't mention any other cultures like African American, Filipinos.
Well, because all they want is they want one of their own kind in there.
But I mean, like, it's like I laugh because I read this. It's a very vocal because like the most major news articles here are very for the victim, right? They're very liberal. They're very voicing the family, right? They're not even
necessarily for the victim because there's a lot of typically like right-wing conservatives that are for the victim. It's less about the victim and more about it's another thing to rally behind because it was one of our people thing, right?
Well, that's within the articles missed so many major facts, and they were just dwelling like the indigenous people need to have a better representation in jury in the court systems, and it's almost thinking I'm like, but why though? So you can like just get biased and find this guy guilty? Like, just meant like they had spies. They wanted spies in the jury so they could turn it into their favor. That's what I was looking at. Like when I was looking at the media, the videos, the articles, it made me think like they just wanted to twist the justice to them.